Today we're going to talk about the Logitech Slim Folio Pro, which you can see right there over my elbow, shoulder, something. So yeah, if you're interested in iPad keyboards, that's today's topic. Now, before we dive in, let's look a little bit at what I used before I had the Logitech Slim Folio Pro. I've used a few keyboards. I've used this thing, which is small. It's about the size of a Kindle, not even. Here's an iPhone 6s Plus. It tells you how big it is. And it folded out. I have a keyboard. This one's by one. Although I've seen it in multiple labels. This is like the rebranded version of whatever. So it's $35. Really good price. Mobile keyboard. It worked. The biggest issue is that control and option are switched because it's a Windows keyboard. It doesn't connect to multiple devices. My favorite and long-term use keyboard with my iPad for 5 years has been this. Logitech K811, and it connects to multiple keys, to multiple keyboards. It connects to connects to multiple computers. It connects to, easily. I can switch easily with the buttons. It's got a nice typing feel. It's lasted. I've never had it run out of battery because I just charge it enough. And that was great. Along with that keyboard, either of those keyboards, I used this cheap Amazon case. The corners, bottom corners, top corners have cracked off. It's like $10. It was good. It's one of the style where you roll up and have the triangle foldy thing at the back to hold your iPad up, which is one thing. I'll talk about it now. I hated that because I got kids, and I disliked it because I have kids, and every time I put like my iPad down on the counter as I'm cooking, there's crap that gets on this part here that I then go like this and put on the face of my iPad. Doesn't matter how many times. Oh, I pop that counter. Kids make messes, and there's always crap on it. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to have and I also had to remember everything. That's kind of another part. I had to remember, I guess mainly just that keyboard. So I did pretty good at it for a long time. I carried that foldable one in my bag, but no longer because I have the Logitech Slim Folio Pro now. As a review here, I have the bridge. I'm trying to think. It's on a shelf back there. Can you see it? Oh, I think you can see it's right there. Anyway, I've got the bridge up there, which I'll be testing as well. In a bit. So I'm going to start finishing up this today, start testing the bridge maybe today, probably tomorrow though. All right, connecting and software for the, or I guess firmware for the Logitech Slim Folio Pro. Connecting, super easy. You hold the Bluetooth button, enter a code into the keyboard, hit enter, done, not a problem. Now, the thing it doesn't do, which I'd love, is that it doesn't report the battery in the iOS widget settings. So there's just nothing, right? If you swipe down or if you swipe over to the widgets and look at battery status, I'll see my iPad, I'll see my Apple Pencil, see headphones, Bluetooth headphones, do not see this there. So it's not in there. There's a few ways in theory that you can figure this out. And my Logitech didn't do this. And also I never didn't bring out my desktop keyboard. I have a Kinesis Freestyle Blue that I use as well. Mainly on the desk, that's what this clamp is for the iPad. To put the iPad up in front of me. I'll talk about that in a bit too. Now, Kinesis didn't, and the Logitech didn't either. I don't know. I wish it did. Now, in theory, you can actually get Siri to report this for you. And I got it in like testing. I was like looking around, how do I test the battery settings? Found it, no problem. Worked, kept reporting battery settings. Tried it last night, didn't work. Let me try it right now, actually. What's the battery level of my keyboard?
Your Curtis's iPad 12.9 is at 95, and Pencil at 100%.
Neither of those were the keyboard. Anyways, I was getting feedback on the keyboard yesterday, 2 days ago, but I'm not getting feedback now, so I don't know what happened. I don't know what changed. I did update to an incremental iOS in it's May 28th, so I just updated iOS on Sunday. Maybe it was the difference there, but I don't know. I don't see it anymore. So now the light, there's a light on there. It is going to report some stuff to you. Let's get Siri away. It is going to report based on color what the battery level is of your keyboard. So let me see, I'm going to refer to this. If it's red, then your keyboard is less than 20% battery and you should charge it when you can. Now, the battery, they say lasts 3 months of, I think it's 2 hours a day typing. So, and I've typed for more than 2 hours a day on this already today. So I'm not going to get 3 months of it. I might get a month out of it. Now, the thing is, with either of the two keyboards I showed you earlier, the K811 or the 1x1, the foldy one, I never ran out of battery. So I'm not sure if this is a big deal. Like, I generally just try to charge things on Fridays like this. So charging it on Friday would keep it up, and I would anticipate I'm not going to have a problem with the keyboard. I've never had a problem with Logitech's other keyboards. So maybe it's just going to be fine. I hope it's just going to be fine. Now, the other thing about connection, to connect the Logitech Slim Folio Pro, you pull the iPad kind of back and out off the magnets and fold it up to connect it again. As soon as it hits the magnets, it connects. I've never had issues with this. It connects right away. It disconnects right away. I've never had errant keyboard strokes when I'm like flipping, have it behind in reading mode, which we'll talk about. Never had issues with that. It's just worked fine every time. So good connection, connects easily, disconnects easily, no errant keystrokes. Everything seems fine. Good keyboard. I do occasionally have with my Kinesis Freestyle Blue, it drops connection, especially with the iPad. Not so much with macOS, but with the iPad, I have to reconnect it. So connection, software, decent. I wish it had battery level reporting in the iOS widget though, but it doesn't. Now, case quality and we'll say robustness. Breaking out of the case, out of the box, I was like, it's an iPad case. I'll just put the thing on. And you slide it down and then you start working the corners around. And I worked one corner around, and number one, I was playing music, so it like cranked the volume crazily loud on my Sonos speaker behind me and like blew my ears out. And so I had to stop my music, and then I started putting it back in and I activated Siri again. Every time I pulled it in and out of the case, I get a dose of Siri, which is not stellar because Siri's a pain in the ass, to be honest. It's not that good. Anyway, and then I went to put the other case corner in, and I was like really pushing on it hard, like trying to get this thing in and figuring it out. And I said, okay, I guess I got to read the directions. And that's just peel back the other corner as best you can and push it hard. That's it. It's in the case. That's kind of the point. It's in the case, right? So that iPad clamp kind of grabs the two corners. The one that's behind me here grabs the two corners of the iPad, and then it holds it. But in the case, it doesn't fit. And getting it in and out of the case is some work. I mean, it's not going to take you an hour to do, but it takes you a few seconds every time, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. Now for that, you do get a lot of protection, so that's good, right? The corners are protected, the top and bottom corner is protected. Basically all that's open on the sides and they match this on the top is the speaker ports. That's it. So everything else is covered in the case. If you were to drop your case, your iPad with that, then it's fine. And even when it's closed, there's like basically a whole keyboard over top of your iPad. So if you were to drop something on it, it's not going to break the iPad. The iPad should be fine in theory, as long as the case stays closed. Now, what else they have is they have a flap that goes over top, and that will hold your pencil, because your pencil is accessible, or can be used. And inside that flap, they have like a little pen loop that you can slide your pencil inside, then close the flap, and that will help keep it closed. Even if you drop it, it should stay closed. It should fully protect your iPad, unless there's some, weird rock that it happens to fall on directly in the few spots that it is open on the case. Another thing you get with the case being so protective is that volume button and that lock button, or the Siri, like if you hold it as Siri, is hard to work. Like you really got to push on it. I actually feel like I need two hands. I definitely cannot reach up with one hand and activate Siri on the lock button. Now in keyboard mode, this is combated by the fact that they have dedicated volume buttons and they have dedicated lock button. And if you hold the lock button, this took me a while to figure out, and I ultimately guessed this. If you hold it, just like if you hold the lock button on the iPad, it does activate Siri. So that's good. But again, I did not find that in any documentation, and I looked and looked and looked. In fact, the documentation was ultimately not stellar. Most of these things that I'm like, oh, and you can do this with it, I found out by like reading another site on some other keyboard review, sometimes for like years ago, or some other feature of iOS as I researched, and I said, I wonder if it works with this keyboard. Documentation on it is only okay. They've got a facts section that's the best. It's okay. That's how I found out the LED light indicator for the keyboard, but it didn't say anything about Siri. And Siri only sometimes works. I don't know. I've been able to get it to work a bunch. I tested it. It was like, sweet. And I didn't record any video. And then I couldn't get it to work again when I went to record video and to test it again as I verified the article. I've seen it work. It doesn't work now. They make this in different sizes. So if you are going to, I assume you're not buying your child a 12.9 maxed out iPad Pro or 12.9 iPad Pro. But if you are buying your kid an iPad Pro, I got my daughter to try and like pull the keyboard back and fold the iPad up, and tried to get her to do that a few times. And it was comical in some ways. Like she had to use so much of her strength in the magnets, which is good. When I first did it, I said, whoa, this is really tight. Like I was surprised how strong those magnets were. But After the first couple times, it didn't feel like an issue. Every single time I got my daughter to do this, and I've asked her a bunch of times over the last couple of weeks to try it, I'm worried that the magnets are going to release and that she's using so much of her strength that she's going to throw my iPad at the same time. So if you got a kid that you're thinking, hey, well, give them like a full little laptop setup. My daughter's 8, by the way. She does figure skating. We do a lot of working out, boot camp stuff. So she's reasonably strong for an 8-year-old, but just be careful. I would wonder, even at, if you have I think they have it for the 9.7-inch iPad, or just the iPad, they call it, then I would at least be worried that my kid's going to, start to pull it off and it's going to fly out of their hands at the same time if they're not very careful with it. You definitely do need 2 hands always to take it from the typing mode to any other mode, right? I'll put my hand on the base of the keyboard and then pull it up and fold the iPad down. So be aware of that and just be ready. Make sure that you're using it for the age appropriate person or the strength appropriate person. My wife, I just got her to try it randomly and she looked at me like, why are you getting me to try this? So for her, it was fine. For my daughter, 8-year-old, it was tough. I didn't even ask my 4 and 2-year-old because that seemed like just waiting to break my iPad. Now, one thing this does combat really well, instead of like those triangle foldy keyboards that I showed you earlier, or cases that I showed you earlier, is that it's a folio. So when I put it down on my always dirty counter because children, it's fine. Nothing's getting on my iPad. It's just on the outside of the case, and I can just fold the iPad up and wash off the outside of the case with a damp cloth if it's dirty, and nothing got on my screen. Good. Now, another thing you need to look at, or most people ask about with this, is does the keyboard touch the screen? And the answer is no, it does not. Now, that doesn't mean that nothing touches the screen, though. Let's grab it right here. So if I take it and fold it up, I'll just take the pencil off so I don't drop it. I don't know if you can see, there's nothing touches the screen, right? The case has these bumpers up on the top, so it's fine, doesn't touch a screen. But what it also has is this second gray line right here. It's like a padded rubbery thing. So when you put your iPad down, like close it, that padded rubbery thing touches the screen. So you do have a line on your screen. Now I use a paper-like screen protector because I like it, and I've had this as my second one. So I like it. And with paper-like screen protector, it's been fine. Yeah, I don't notice it. I can't see it now, right? I could see it when I had the iPad off, when I was just showing you how it worked, but I can't see it now. So in practice, it's not an issue if you're really bugged. Now, I could see, actually, because that's fingerprint magnets, these things. Without the paper, I could see it being a bigger issue. I could see that there'd be like a line in your greasy fingerprints across there. That drive me nuts, but the fingerprints drive me nuts, so that's why I have the paper on there. Just be aware, that touches the screen. It's soft. I don't think it's going to damage the screen. If you're putting enough pressure on the whole iPad that it is going to damage the screen, you're putting enough pressure on your iPad that you're just going to damage your screen anyways. Keyboard doesn't touch. The rubber bumper does, and the corners of the iPad or of the case provide enough protection, enough width that it doesn't actually touch the keyboard at all. Now, another thing this doesn't do, and the bridge doesn't do this either, I'm going to acknowledge this up front, is that you can't put it in portrait mode. When I'm writing longer pieces, when I'm writing even this review, which comes out at like 2,000 words in the written version, I like to flip it up in portrait view so that I can just see more text on the page. Doesn't allow it. That's it. There's the Touch Type Pro does. Now, it's a different case. It's kind of a folio. It takes the Apple keyboard, whatever the keyboard is called now. I'm blanking on that. And it is a folio, and it lets you just pop it out and stand it up. So that's cool. This one doesn't. That's actually one fix I'd love to see if the kind of the robust case cover part, I don't know, like that's actually gripping the iPad. If that was a couple magnets, you could snap it out, stand it vertical. That would be great. And then if you could, then that would actually let you put it up on something like the Visa mount as well, because it's just not going to happen with the keyboard behind your iPad while it's in reading mode or when I put it up in the keyboard. As far as accessing the iPad screen, you can see that there's a small bumper at the bottom of the iPad, at the bottom of the screen, and that raises the iPad up just a little bit and makes the screen totally accessible. One thing I'm concerned about, and I've read about the Bridge keyboard, is that it does make the bottom of the screen level with the keyboard. So it's sometimes hard to do the swipe up gestures. Didn't find that with this. Everything's accessible while the iPad's fully protected. Nothing to worry about. Now, how heavy is the Logitech Slim Folio Pro? Because really, maybe not with a 12.9-inch iPad, but really the iPad is about being portable. And having something easy, right? I run with the iPad on my back and run with that keyboard on my back, so that's good. The Slim Folio Pro weighs in my measurements 703 grams. The iPad weighs in at 652 grams, so it's actually heavier than your iPad, as far as I can tell. I also weighed the Bridge because it came in at the same time, and the Bridge is 700 grams just for the keyboard. It does not include the magnetic back base, so I actually think that the Bridge will wind up heavier. And I didn't weigh at the time, but I could do that quickly now. Let me see. Turn on my little scale because it's beside me. So this Logitech K11 weighs 342 grams. So that's half the weight of the other one. And the case that it goes with, that I used, so the case I used to use with it was 365 grams. So actually, those two together are pretty much the same weight as this, about 50 grams lighter. Yeah, 50 grams lighter. Someone on YouTube's totally going to check this and say, your math wasn't quite right. So it's actually just about the same weight as that keyboard that I used to carry and that case, which I didn't realize till just now. Cool. And so it'll be just about the same weight as the Bridge as well. Now, it's not the same weight when I'm just using it in reading mode. We're going to come to that. Right? That's what now reading with the Logitech Slim Folio Pro is my outline. Now, reading mode, you take it, and we'll do this for you. You take it, you just pop it off. The keyboard's now off. We are now in reading mode. So one of the issues that is annoying to me is the keyboard in the back. Just feels annoying. Another thing that I always find annoying, this happens with any case, is that, as you can see, like it's not even. I always like it to be even. It's not even. Yeah, but you can read like that. Actually feels fairly heavy, right? So if you think that I'm adding 300 and something grams to this over top of just reading with that blue case that I had earlier, that cheap Amazon case, because I don't have a keyboard when I just use that case. Nice positive lock with the magnets. So reading mode, it feels fine. I actually tried pulling it out of reading mode, like pulling it out and just having the naked iPad there, and it felt great. I was like, oh great, so much lighter like this. And then 5 seconds later, I was like, oh, I want to type something. And that's actually a problem because the keyboard's only connected with the iPad. Isn't that really? Yeah. So I guess I have to think about that. I have to try it. Should we try it now? We'll try it later. Let me try it now. Let's see. If I take it out of the case, does it stay connected? It does. So in theory, I could have the naked iPad right here, and I could be typing on the case at the same time if I wanted. If I wanted to reach over quickly. Totally possible. I don't know why I wouldn't do that. Yeah, so that could work. It's another way to type. If I wanted to just read, you can see getting it in and out is not terrible, right? We'll do it again. We'll put it back in. Slide it down. We activated Siri because we always activate Siri then. This is the last corner. This is the one that's hard.
I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, thanks, Siri. You don't normally understand. So, yeah, you could do that. You could have it off to the side. You could just type quickly. That is, I guess a bit more to it than just a bare Bluetooth keyboard, but it's totally doable. You could definitely do it if you wanted. I don't know why I didn't think about it earlier, but I didn't. So now you get it live on YouTube. And it's got a third mode, which is drawing mode. I think you call it sketching mode, and I'll show you that. In sketching mode, you detach it, and you're supposed to go like this. We're in now sketching mode. A few problems here. It's gonna like press a bit, like as you use it, it's not fully stable. So I do a bit of drawing, do a bit of sketching, and that's super annoying. Just annoying, not stellar. If you want reading mode, it's only okay. Now typing on the Logitech Slim Folio Pro. It is a little narrower than key spacing than the Logitech K11. Not a lot. It's like a centimeter, half a centimeter. It's very close, and so it's a very good typing experience. It's got full-size shift keys. It's got an inverted T arrow key. They're half heights, but half heights don't bother me. My Logitechs also have half heights as well for the inverted T. Definitely has less travel than the Logitech K11. And in fact, even has less travel than this like foldy keyboard I showed you earlier, because it's probably only marginally thinner than this even. Now it's thin, right? You could add some thickness to get more travel, but I'm not sure you're going to like really up the experience, and you are going to up the weight on it that way. So typing was quite good. Now, one thing they do have is that there's a dumb world key in the bottom corner. It brings up your emoji keyboard. I think it's a waste of time. That doesn't, maybe I just don't type enough emojis. I'd rather have a dedicated Siri button. As I said, holding the lock button long enough does activate Siri for you. So you can do it that way, but I'd rather just have Siri down in the bottom corner, which is something I know the Bridge has. So I'm excited to try that and see, like, do I really like it? Will I use Siri more? Is Siri useful? I guess we know the answer to that question. It's sort of maybe useful sometimes if you get the right server. Unlike Apple's iPad keyboard offering, it does have a full suite of media keys across the top. It's got brightness for itself. It's got some backlit keyboard. It's got volume. It's got fast forward, like skip track. It's got start stop. It's got a lock key. It's got their Bluetooth key for connection. Good keyboard, good media keys. I like media keys. That's one of the reasons I never bought the Apple one, because it never had media keys. Typing experience, it's fine. It's nothing stands out on it. It's not like, whoa, this is like a stellar typing experience. It did notice, especially at first, that it wasn't that it had low travel, but I honestly didn't even notice it after a bit of typing. It was fine. As far as typing on your lap, it's like a plastic shell wrapped around a keyboard, right? And you definitely feel the flex when it's on your lap. I'm conscious of it still, and I've been typing on it for a couple weeks now, about 2 weeks now. On my lap in a spot, did half an hour last night in the car while my kids were asleep, and my wife had to go into something, and they slept in the car, and I typed away for a bit. And every single time, I'm just like adjusting to make sure I've got it right, and I can feel the flex in the keyboard. I don't think it affected my accuracy or my speed much, but I definitely was continually conscious of it. So that's a knock against it. If you're doing lots of typing on your lap, you want lots of typing on your lap, it's only okay for that. It's not terrible. It worked every time. I never fell off my lap, but it wasn't as nice as I assume the Bridge is going to be, which is a rigid piece of aluminum. So we'll see if the Bridge really stands up to my assumptions about what it will be. This one, little flexy. This is a plastic shell wrapped around a keyboard, so I don't know, what else do you expect? Put a carbon fiber rod through it to stiffen it? I guess they could, but yeah, I don't know. Decent lappability, if you use that word, which sounds a little lame to me. Now, a few issues. Because the keyboard sits forward, I think 13 centimeters is my measurements. When I'm cooking, when I use that, I use Paprika as my recipe manager on my iPad. When I'm cooking, your keyboard's 13 centimeters closer to all your food. And so I'd push it back, and then I'd be like, I can barely read this now. And I have to bring it forward, and I'd be worried about getting junk in the keyboard, and that's a pain in the butt. So, with those triangle foldy ones, you didn't have that because all the stand is behind it. With the Bridge, I guess I won't have that because I'll be able to pop it out, flip it around, and you can put it in the opposite way so the keyboard is stand out the back, and so it's like an inverted like that, right? As opposed to looking at it with this being the screen and this being the keyboard. So I assume the Bridge will like feel like I can get around that. That will probably hinge on how easy it is to take it in and out of the hinge. That was an annoyance for it, and I'm just going to spill something on it at some point. I definitely spilled something in front of my iPad, but with most cases, the iPad's up a little bit, so it doesn't matter, right? Or even just like getting some flour on the iPad, just wipe the flour away. On the keyboard, it's like into the keyboard. Yeah, then I haven't read reports of it being unreliable like the MacBook Pro keyboards. My old Logitech K11, my kids use it for their iPad sometimes, and it's been fine for 5 years. So I don't know. I assume it's going to be fine. It's definitely something to think of that if you're going to use for cooking, if you're going to use it in the kitchen a lot, then you either need to pull it out of the case, which is a bit of work. It's definitely enough that you're like, that's frustrating. Or you need to have a second iPad, I guess. Like, I guess I could use an old iPad mini or something like that, buy a cheap iPad for the kitchen, but that always seems frivolous to me. So I'm not going to do that. Something to note if you do some cooking and use your iPad as the recipe repository. Now, one of the other issues, I already mentioned this, is that I'd love if the kind of protection part of the case could be popped off, and then you could like take the iPad by itself and have basically an iPad with just some bumpers on the corners and a little bit on the back. Love that. You know, some magnets. It increased the weight. I'd almost be willing to give a little, add 100 grams or something to get that feature, so that when I pulled it off, it's barely heavier than the iPad, and I could have it. And if I wanted to use it, I could just snap it back down. That would also let you flip it up into portrait mode. I don't know what the logistics of this are. I'm not a materials person. I don't know magnets, anything like that. But that'd be cool. I'd love it. So Logitech, get on this right now. Come on. I said it. Should you purchase the Logitech Slim Folio Pro? Like I say, it's got good protection. It's got a decent keyboard. So that's good. Now, if you always are going to be using it in type mode, then I'd say, yeah, it's definitely a solid option. I like to have a more ergonomic setup when I'm at my desk, which I am most of the time. So I would prefer to be able to put it in the clamp and have it so that actually lets me put my iPad at eye height, and my keyboard ends up often behind my iPad, and I just can touch it. Like my iPad is right in front of me, my keyboard is farther back, so it's good for my hands. Whereas the iPad is also then further away from me. So I'd like to be able to pull it out easily and be able to put it up in my stand there, but I can't currently with this keyboard. Now, if you're always typing, if you're on the go all the time, if you just need a reliable keyboard and have some protection too, because the bridge isn't going to offer protection either, right? There's no like bumpers around it. If you drop it, it's just dropped. It fell. Your iPad fell on itself if it falls on the back, or it fell on the keyboard if it didn't. So, if that's what you're looking for, it's really good. If you take it out a lot, if you're gonna like want it in its reading mode a lot, if you're gonna draw a lot, then this probably isn't the right one for you. It's heavier when you're reading. It basically doubles the weight of your iPad. It'd be interesting to know if it doubles or more than doubles the weight of smaller iPads like the 9.7. It's not stable really in drawing mode. It's acceptable, I suppose, if you only sketch sometimes, but it's not stellar. Yeah, and it's hard to get in and out of the case. It's hard. It's more difficult than I would like to get in and out of the case. So if those are your needs, if you're going to draw, if you're going to do a lot of reading and like hold it up like a book, then probably not. If you do all your reading, if it's basically can stay in keyboard mode most of the time, 90% of use is going to be keyboard mode, great. Now, 90% of my use might be in keyboard mode, but I actually spend, say, 2 hours on Saturday and Sunday mornings reading News Plus, Apple News Plus, and reading magazines on it. So in that instance, I want to read the magazine fully, right? I want to read comics fully. So there's enough times in my use where I find it frustrating. I suppose I could have a second cheap case because I really need to replace that one. Only for weekend use, I just popped the iPad out and used it. I could do that. That's actually not a terrible idea, but I'm not sure that I'm going to. It's my review of the Logitech Slim Folio Pro. There'll be links in the show notes to buy it on Amazon in the description below. If you want to support the channel, you can do that. You can also sign up on Patreon at patreon.com/CurtisMcHale. Just help support the channel, help support the books, the content I write, helping you run your business, helping you be more productive. Thanks for watching. Keep being awesome.